Darryl yawned, stood from the bed, then sighed into a balled-up fist. Terry kept the walls of their shitty little apartment covered in porno pictures, and that wallpaper alone should have been enough to immediately hammer home his location. I didn't even have that much to drink, thought Darryl, but he knew damn well that wasn't true. Darryl left the bedroom, took a piss in the yellow bowl in the bathroom, and then wandered into Terry's unfortunate living room. The wallpaper here could be described as tame compared to the bedroom, just T&A, no penetration, but it was still unlikely to impress anyone with 10 cents worth of brains. Darryl sat down heavily on the couch, then flicked the TV on with the remote from the coffee table. He gave a look to Terry, but if his friend had noticed him, he was keeping it a secret. He doesn't notice shit. Terry had eyes for a keyboard, mouse, and screen, but managed to avoid just about everything else. Terry sat just a few feet away at the dining room table. His ears were covered in a pair of massive headphones, his hands were draped over a stained keyboard and mouse, and his monitor was filled with dancing numbers. Darryl knew what Terry was listening to, metal on his Walkman, always metal, but he didn't even want to ask about the numbers. Terry liked his porno everywhere and his women stuffed like turkeys, but his computer shit was not to be trifled with. Terry was way too good at that for messing around, and he was usually good for a place to stay if Darryl was too drunk to walk. Darryl contented himself with the TV, as Terry let his fingers tap keys and click buttons, but the sound of the work was just background noise. Darryl managed to sit in the apartment for all of 1 hour before getting a beer from the fridge, drinking it in a few savage pulls that had once really impressed girls behind the Austin drive-in, and then leaving the can on the counter and grabbing another one. Darryl's days of impressing girls with his beer-slamming abilities were long gone. In fact, his time spent attempting to impress girls or anyone else was long gone. Lately, he'd come to consider effort itself overrated when things could be had so easily. After 3 more beers and another hour of TV, Terry finally peeled the headphones off and turned to Darryl. "I knew you were up," he said, and Darryl just nodded in response. "I could hear you the whole time. I was just waiting for you to say something." Darryl nodded again, saluted Terry with his beer, and then finished it in a single gulp. "You looked busy, so I let you be busy," said Darryl. It was only partly true. The sooner Terry realized he was up, the sooner they would have to talk about work, and Darryl wasn't in the mood. Work was how the bender had started, and why he was drinking at such an unreasonable pace, but the subject was unavoidable at this point. He owed Terry, and they both knew it. "I was only busy because I was waiting for you to come to your senses," said Terry, and Darryl nodded. "And don't try and fucking read me, Darryl. I'm not in the mood, and you already know what I'm going to say." "You want money," said Darryl. He didn't need to go rooting around in Terry's top knot to know what his friend was thinking. They both had green on their minds. There was just no good way to score right now. Of course, that's Terry's job, thought Darryl, and they both knew that, too. While he slumbered off a drunk in the smut chamber, Terry was supposed to be hard at work on something. That was the deal, even if it was an unspoken one. "You need money, just like I do," said Terry. "You'd rather make this my fault, though, than try to work out a solution." That made Darryl raise an eyebrow and cock his head. Terry couldn't be in his head. Not like that. Not like what I can do.